What is up, guys? So we are a month into the football season now. Sorry, this first time going live. We are a month into the football season now, so I have decided to give my SEC power rankings after the first month of the season. Now, I mentioned this to Skylar back earlier this week, and he wanted me to make mention. This is my power rankings. This is not his because I could have some controversy here that some people might not like. But um, whenever you watch this video, um, leave your thoughts in the comments as to how accurate you think my SEC power rankings are. So we're going to start at the top. I do these power rankings based on wins against Power Five opponents, wins in general against the Group of Five teams, the FB or FCS teams, losses against Power Five opponents, as well as losses against Group of Five teams and the FCS teams. I also take into account the way that these teams played in the games that they won and lost. I take into account the home and road and neutral site games that go into it as well. So I'm going to try to do this after each month of the season. Like I said, this is after month month one. um, each SEC team has played 5 games. Vanderbilt has played 6 because they played in week 0. So let's get right into it. Georgia is number 1. Georgia is number 1 until they finally lose. And even then, we'll just have to see where they're at. Georgia, yes, they have had a fairly easy start to the season. They have gone 5-0, 2-0 in the conference. They have played UAB, UT Martin, Ball State. They've also played South Carolina and Auburn. So their 5 teams are against teams that aren't, top tier or anything. Um, but they are 5-0, and they are the 2-time defending national champs. So they are number 1 in the power rankings until they aren't anymore. Number 2, I do have Bama. Now, there are teams that are undefeated, and Bama has 1 loss, but like I said, we take into account all these other factors too. Alabama has 2 wins against Power 5 teams. Both of those are SEC teams. They have beaten Mississippi State and they beat Ole Miss. And that Ole Miss win was never in doubt, in my opinion. Alabama took control of that game and they won it from start to finish, other than the one time that Ole Miss was ahead 7-3. They do have 1 loss on the year. It is a Power 5 loss against a team that is in the top 5 in the AP right now, which is Texas. So that weighs very, very heavy. That loss was at home. But like I said, with how good Texas is, that loss weighs pretty heavy in this power rankings, meaning that Alabama's loss was a really, really good loss, and it will look good towards the end of the year as long as Texas stays up there. Number 3, this is where some people might not like it as much. I have Ole Miss. Ole Miss has 2 Power 5 wins on the year. They had the LSU game from last week. Very, very good win on their resume. They also have, um, sorry, I don't have the schedule pulled up. They do have a second Power 5 win. Um, I'll try to get that pulled up real quick for you guys. I'll have to do it on my phone. Um, but also one of their wins on the season is against a Group of 5 team in Tulane, who is one of the best Group of 5 teams out there. So that, in my opinion, weighs heavy going into this. They also have a Power 5 loss. That loss is to Alabama, who, like I said, in my opinion, is the number 2 in the power rankings. So that also weighs heavy. Alabama is a very good team just outside of the top 10. You give me just a second. I'll get the Ole Miss schedule pulled up. The other one was Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech, not high in they're one of the lowest Power Five teams out there, but it's still a Power Five win, and that does weigh heavy going into some of this. 4 and 5, you could swap either one of these teams, in my opinion. I have Kentucky and I have Missouri. Both are sitting at 5-0. Kentucky is 2-0 in the conference. Missouri is 1-0. Both have 2 wins against Power 5 teams. Now, both of Kentucky's wins are SEC teams. You have Vanderbilt and you have Florida. Missouri has 1 win in the conference, that is Vanderbilt. Their other Power 5 win was um, against Kansas State on the walk-off field goal. Missouri has played better competition overall. So you could bump them up into that 4 spot, in my opinion. They have played a very good group of 5 team in Memphis, a team that has gotten talk as being one of the next ones into a Power 5 conference somewhere. They have also played MTSU, who is one of the better Power 5, I mean not Power 5, group of 5 teams most years. Kentucky has played out of conference Eastern Kentucky, Ball State, and Akron, I believe. But the reason that you could put them at 4 instead of 5 is because of their 2 conference games. So, in my opinion, you could swap either one of them 4 and 5. And some people might say, well, that's still too high for these 2 teams. Well, this is 1 month into the season. I have a feeling that come this weekend, some of this is going to change, including the Missouri Kentucky power ranking spot. Number 6, I have Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M has 1 loss on the season. That loss being to a Power 5 opponent in Miami, who is very good. They're still undefeated on the year. That weighs very heavy in these rankings here. Texas A&M also has 2 Power 5 wins. Those Power 5 wins being against Auburn and Arkansas, 2 conference opponents. Granted, they're kind of bottom tier conference opponents. So you could make an argument for Texas A&M also over Missouri and Kentucky. But that 1 loss and the opponents that they have played doesn't just vault them over Missouri and Kentucky, in my opinion, for this power ranking. Tennessee is sitting at number 7. And being the Vol Fanatic show, you might think, well, I'm going to have some SEC or some Tennessee bias in this. I don't. I could have ranked the Vols higher, but Tennessee has not impressed this year. They do have 2 Power 5 wins, them being against Virginia, which is one of the bottom tier Power 5 Power 5 teams, still a Power 5 win. And South Carolina, which was a decent Power 5 win and an in-conference opponent. You also have wins against UTSA and Austin Peay. Austin Peay game was not impressive. In the UTSA game, it still wasn't a complete domination. And then the loss. Yes, it was a Power 5 loss, but it was to a Florida team that is lower tier of the conference. So that weighs heavy into bringing Tennessee down to this number 7 spot about halfway through your SEC power rankings. Tennessee could easily vault going forward, but as of right now, they're sitting at the 7th spot. Number 8, LSU. LSU could be higher. They could be lower. They're 3-2 on the year, 2-1 in the conference. Their 2 losses are both to Power 5 teams. You have Florida State, who is undefeated, ranked in the top 5. Neutral site game. Yes, it was played in Florida, but it wasn't at Florida State's campus. It was a neutral site game. But the way that they lost that game, it was utter domination in the second half by Florida State. You lost to Ole Miss in a shootout in which your defense did not look good at all. That weighs heavy. Your 2 Power 5 wins are against Mississippi State in which you dominated, but it's a Mississippi State team that is not very good. And the other one is Arkansas, in which you really didn't look dominant, but you didn't look terrible. LSU is at that point of the season that it is almost make it or break it time. And this weekend against Missouri could go a long way into determining what kind of season LSU is going to have. So they're also middle of the pack. They could easily vault their way up. They could easily crash. Number 9, I have Florida. And I'm going to go ahead and add this one in too. Number 10 is South Carolina. These two could be flopped. I'm going to put Florida ahead because they have more wins overall. Florida is 3-2 on the season, 1-1 in the conference. They have one Power 5 win. They have 2 Power 5 losses. Florida did not look very good against Utah. Second game of the year, I forget who they played now. They looked a whole lot better. Then you get a big win against Tennessee, and that is ultimately where I've ranked Florida ahead of South Carolina, is because of that win against Tennessee. Then you look not very good against Charlotte, and you get dismantled by Kentucky. So Florida could be lower on this list, but I think 9 is a fair spot to put them because we'll look at South Carolina here. 2-3 on the year, 1-2 in the conference. But South Carolina has had a very, very tough start to this season. They have played against North Carolina, neutral site game, in which you were given every opportunity to win that game, but because the offensive line was so bad and Spencer Rattler was sacked 9 times, there was no way that you were going to win that game. Then you beat Furman in the second game of the year. Then you play against Georgia, number 1 team in the nation. And you looked pretty good for the first half of that game, but ultimately Georgia did what Georgia does, and they took care of business. Then you play against Mississippi State and really did not look good at all. You still won the game, but you let Will Rogers throw for almost 500 yards in that game and only win by a touchdown. And then Tennessee took care of business in last week's game. So because of the losses for South Carolina and the way that you lost those games, along with Florida having that win over Tennessee, that is why I have Florida ranked at 9, South Carolina at 10. Number 11, we have Auburn. Auburn is 3-2 on the year, 0-2 in the conference. They do have a Power 5 win, and that win was on the road at California. That weighs a little bit heavier, in my opinion. You also have a very close loss to Georgia. You played UMass and I forget the other team. I think Mercer for your group of 5 games. You also lost to Texas A&M. Texas A&M and Georgia are 2 of the top teams in the conference. The Texas A&M game for the first half was very competitive. Then you got blown out in the second half. The Georgia game, you looked really good for the majority of the game. Played them very tight. Ultimately, Auburn is just the best of the rest, in my opinion, as far as these last few teams. Number 12 and number 13, you could easily swap. But I have a very good reason for ranking 12 and 13 the way that I do. Number 12, I have Mississippi State. Number 13, I have Arkansas. And I'll tell you why. Mississippi State has a Power 5 win. I know that it was against Arizona, but it is a Power 5 win. Arkansas does not have that. Their 2 wins on the year are against Kent State, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. Is a team out of Carolina, I believe. But those are your 2 wins on the year, and your losses are to BYU, who's in the Big 12, Power 5 loss. LSU and I'm sorry, I'm blanking. The LSU. It was another conference opponent that they lost to Texas A&M. I think. I think that's right. Texas A&M. Um, I'll get that looked up for y'all. Um, but you do not have a Power Five win in Fayetteville, and you really haven't looked all that great this year as an Arkansas as a team. And Mississippi State, although they're not very good this year, they've looked better at times. I mean, you played South Carolina down to the wire. You got a big win in overtime against Arizona. Did not look good at all against LSU. And then your other games, you had Southeast Louisiana and Alabama. Southeast Louisiana was an easy win. Alabama, it was just domination from start to finish for Alabama. So, but ultimately, like I said, that Power Five win that yes, it was Texas A&M and Arkansas played. That Power Five win that Mississippi State has puts them at 12 over Arkansas right now for me. Um, and number 14 is Vandy. Vandy 2-4 on the year, 0-2 in the conference. They do not have a win against a Power Five team. They also have a loss against a Group of Five team, the only SEC team to have a loss against a Group of Five team this year, and that being UNLV. So Vandy has got a long year this year. But this is my Power Five rankings my SEC Power rankings for the first month of the season. Um, I'll go through the list again. I have Georgia at 1, Alabama at 2, Ole Miss at 3, Kentucky and Missouri at 4 and 5. You can swap those either way you want to. Texas A&M at 6, Tennessee at 7, LSU at 8, Florida and South Carolina at 9 and 10. You could swap those either way, but I gave Florida at 9 because they have another win, or they are 3 and 2, and South Carolina is 2 and 3. You have Auburn at 11, Mississippi State at 12, Arkansas at 13, and Vanderbilt at 14. So get ready for a pretty good slate of games this weekend in the SEC. Like I said, I will be doing this SEC power ranking monthly. So after each month of the year, or after each month of the season this year, I will be giving my updated SEC power rankings, and I expect to see a lot of movement in this from the first rankings to the second rankings come the first week of November. So, guys, appreciate you tuning into the video. Like I said, tune into the games this weekend and go Vols, guys.